What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Titletown South Florida. This is Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor at the Miami Herald, bringing you back the Miami Herald's high school sports show. We've been gone a little while. We took a little break during the summer, but it's football season. Practices are underway throughout South Florida, and it's time to talk some football. And joining me once again, my co-host, partner in crime, Jordan McPherson, Miami Herald's little bit of everything writer, but mainly Miami Marlins writer, who's nice enough to join us today on a busy day in baseball, which is the trade deadline day. Always hectic on the trade deadline day when we trying to figure out, will the Marlins make a move? Will they not? Jordan's all over it, but he's also a big fan of high school football. Jordan, how you doing, my friend?
Well, doing well, keeping my head above water and figure it's already a crazy day. Might as well add a little bit of high school football into the mix as well. Practice started the other day, and before you know it, the season's going to be here. And in South Florida, it's basically the first step towards seeing the eventual state championship contenders starting to make their push.
I feel like we just left Drive Pig Stadium the other day. I know I left Drive Pig Stadium the other day watching Lionel Messi, not just because of football or anything like that, but not just the competition, not just South Florida is always the hotbed for football. It is hot outside every day, more than ever, and that's saying something for Miami weather. So if you're out there, kids, coaches, everybody out there practicing these days, starting this week, stay safe, stay hydrated, and do the right things when it comes to keeping your bodies in the proper shape and taking care of yourselves in the heat. And on that note, let's talk about it a little bit. We're going to jump right back into the football season. We're doing kind of like a little bit of a soft unveil, a tease, if you will, as to the top 20 rankings for South Florida. Where will the teams start the season in Dade and Broward? Some teams are obvious, coming back. The state champions really haven't changed much. If anything, the four that won it all last year have gotten better. But there's some teams also in the mix that could make some noise this year, maybe upstart the status quo a little bit. So we'll give you some hints. We'll talk about that. Our preview at MiamiHerald.com for the season will begin to unveil starting on August 13th. So we'll give you a little tease by talking about those top 20 teams. A couple of those, we go in a little more in depth in this episode, and those will be Monarch High School, which last year made it to the regional semis, matched their deepest push into the playoffs in school history. They've reloaded and coming back strong. And, of course, Homestead, we visited them briefly in the spring with new coach Ron Thornton. And we talk a little bit about the Broncos and their chances of maybe taking it a step further this season coming up as they try to win their first state title. But remember, in addition to watching this show on YouTube, you can watch it at MiamiHerald.com. We put it pretty much on every story we run. It's on our website. And also as a podcast, it's available. Catch it on Spotify, iTunes, your favorite podcatcher, wherever you like to listen to your pods. It's there for you. But anyway, without further ado, let's go, Jordan. Let's jump right into this top 20. Again, we're not going to reveal the exact order, but we've kind of people can kind of figure out, if you're a fan of high school football, kind of the tiers that teams are at. Of course, the top 4, top 5, probably pretty obvious to everybody who's in it. The Central Rockets are coming off a huge season last year. St. Thomas Aquinas, we'll start with the common denominator there with those two. They're both trying to do something that hasn't been done before. No team since 1963, when they started doing the playoffs, no team has ever won 5 state titles in a row. So another milestone for these two great programs, Aquinas and Central. Got a chance to see Central in the spring a little bit. A lot of new players, a lot of new faces, but a lot of great ones. They're like your favorite fantasy team that just reloads every year. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the Rockets. Armando Blunt comes over from Dillard. They have 3 new quarterbacks that have come in, well, from California, and also, adding to that offensive firepower. You got LaWayne McCoy, Virginia Tech commit, all around threat on offense, great receiver, kid looking like he was a good contributor last season. This year he's going to be allowed to develop even more. And then guys on defense like Ezekiel Marcelin, Vincent Shavers comes over from Monsignor Pace. I mean, a lot's been said about the Rockets. Doesn't need more to be said about the Rockets, but let's just say as they go into the season ranked 5 already when it comes to the national rankings, you're going to see the Rockets right at the top.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when you have a team like Central that did what it did last year and just seems like you look at the roster and go and think there's no way they can get better, and then they do. It's great. It's incredible to see on paper just how much better this team potentially could get from what it did last year when it made its perfect run last season, and to know the depth they have. And again, it's not just from the starters. They have depth all throughout the roster. They've got their backups could probably be starters elsewhere around Miami-Dade County. Just knowing just the numbers that they have and what they're going to be able to do. And again, their schedule is going to be fun to watch as well, watching them just looking at who they're facing throughout the season. I mean, start off right away. You've got Vanguard, you got Bishop Gorman on September 1st. And then you have the head honchos down here. They play Chaminade, which was a matchup we wanted to see last year. We finally are going to get to see that this year. And then all of the other inter-city matchups. It's going to be a fun season to watch at Central.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this quarterback competition turns out over there because, they bring in Beckham Kritza from California. That's the kid who I was talking about before, junior, big, tall kid, kind of has that, maybe a Justin Herbert in high school look to him, lanky. And then J.C. Evans, another one with, again, big size kid, not very bulky, but just that physique where, both those guys are going to be towering over the line, good vision. We saw them in the spring. They seem like they have a good grasp already or getting a good grasp of the offense and what Central likes to do. Not that, with a team like that, with so many weapons, you don't need to rewrite the book. It's a very simple offense. Just get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. But at every position, I don't think I've seen, and this is saying something, even in years where they had Dalvin Cook, years where they had Devontae Freeman, just in terms of raw talent, what they're bringing in this season is pretty remarkable. I mean, I'd be shocked if they get derailed by anybody. But you mentioned Bishop Gorman. Central's going to roll into this season winning, I believe, 26 in a row, winners of 26 in a row. The last team that beat them was Bishop Gorman, and it was here in South Florida. This time, they have to go out to Las Vegas. Not the first time that Central's gone out there to Las Vegas to play them, but this Bishop Gorman team steamrolled Chaminade last year in that bowl series late in December. So, I mean, if anyone's going to take down the Rockets, it would probably be them in that game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be a fun early matchup just to give us that litmus test of exactly where they are on the national scale. We know where they're going to be in terms of the local scene, especially that Class 2M. It's going to be basically them in American Heritage or 1A, 1B. You've got a couple other teams we'll talk about in here as well, Norland, Northwestern. But we know that right now, Class 2M, it's Central's until proven otherwise. But to see where they are in the national scale early is going to be good to see exactly where they stand in that pecking order.
Definitely. And that Broward showcase, I think takes us to our next couple of teams here. I mean, we know probably in that top 4 or 5, you're going to have Chaminade themselves going for 8 years in a row, trying to make it 8 years in a row of making it to the state finals. They're going for a three-peat, but just that consistency, though, that would be a record, too. That would be a state record, 8 years in a row. Glades Day right now and them share the record going 7 years in a row. So, again, the Lions look loaded. I don't think anyone's going to stop them in 1M on the way there, that's for sure. But when you look at the Broward Showcase that we were talking about, those early matchups that they're going to have are pretty impressive. The two of them coming on that Saturday that are going to be televised on the ESPN family of networks, where Aquinas is going to be at home, and Chaminade is going to be playing at Aquinas in that game. They're taking on St. Francis Academy, 6th-ranked team in the nation. Aquinas taking on Bosco, another team that is going to be ranked in the top 5. I mean, that event in itself, early weekend, has some of the best of the best. American Heritage is going to be at home on their side too. Miramar is going to be in it. Teams we'll talk about in a little bit. But Aquinas, it's typical Aquinas. Chance Robinson on offense, wide receiver, James Madison the second, up and down that roster. I'm really excited to see those running backs, Stacey Gage and Jordan Lyle. I mean, I think that you can't put together a tandem of two better guys in one backfield, I think, than what St. Thomas has.
No, agreed. Again, Jordan Lyles, he really impressed me last year. And just quickly back to the Broward Showcase, I love you mentioned all those games, but you didn't mention Cardinal Gibbons against Cardinal Gibbons.
Oh my God, the mirror match. Yeah. I mean, anyone who played Mortal Kombat back in the day, when you play the same guy, I guess that's going to be the worst thing to write, trying to figure out which one's which. I mean, the good thing is, as you looked up, different nicknames, at least that. Yeah.
So we at least have that saving grace there. But yeah, again, St. Thomas is loaded, Chaminade's loaded. They're the two standard bearers in their classes, Chaminade and 1M, just like they were in Class 2A before the whole realignment to the suburban metro grouping last year. Chaminade's just the standard bearer there. They're the team that basically could go and you could probably put them in any class and they'd be in the contender spot. And Chaminade's schedule is going to basically be facing all those big teams. They're facing Northwestern. They're facing Gibbons. They're facing Plantation American Heritage. They're facing Central, Dillard. list goes on and on. They're going to be well tested for that 1M playoff run, which once they get to the playoffs, it seems like each year it goes from the gauntlet of a regular season to this is what we're facing in the playoffs until the final rounds for the most part, just because of how stacked they are and how tested they make themselves. But Chaminade, yeah, they're going to be one of those that legit group. And again, their roster, it's finally this year they're senior heavy. A lot of last years it's been these guys who have been sophomores and juniors carrying them. Now you have you got Jeremiah Smith's a senior now, Davion Goss is a senior, Cedric Bailey's a senior. Their main three weapons on offense are seniors. They've been in this spot for basically their entire high school career, so they know what they have to do to get everything done. So it's going to be great to see what they do to end their careers on a high note.
Yeah, I mean, I just said about the running back tandem, you're probably not going to get a better wide receiver tandem than what Cedric Bailey has to throw to in Chaminade. I mean, with Smith, I mean, with JoJo Trader there, I mean, that's top notch. You're talking guys that are going to Ohio State, the guys that are going to premier programs, guys that are going to be playing on Sundays. Let's face it. I mean, unless something happens, hopefully they continue on course, but they have the talent to make it and play at not just the next level, potentially in the NFL. So again, tremendous teams and great to watch. As we get a little further in the poll here, let's talk about Columbus. The team, there's sort of like that top tier, and Columbus is starting. I think we've said it a bunch of times. They want to be in that conversation as the national powerhouse team. They're coming into the season ranked in the top around the 23 by Max Preps. Some polls have them a little higher, some a little lower, but they're on the cusp of that. And when you look at their schedule, they have an opportunity too. They're not in that Broward Showcase, obviously, but they have a few of the big heavy hitters early on. They play Tampa Jesuit again, this time on the road. They beat a good Tampa Jesuit team at home last year. They have right off the bat, that Clearwater Academy International team. I mean, that's sort of like an IMG type of team. They're going to go up there and play them in week one. So, I mean, in 4M, they're still the favorite. No, there's no doubt about it. When you look at the defense that they have coming back, Dalen Russell, they have they added Willis McGahee the fourth to an already loaded defense, as we've talked about. And then on the offensive side, Fernando Mendoza's back. And that offense still has Jose Leon and a bunch of weapons that they had last season. They got to replace that running back, but they've got a guy in Agaman Adai that might jump right in there and be that sort of like that versatile type that they had before with Cedric Irvin Jr. So let's see. I don't think Columbus. I mean, they're going to have some challenges here locally with some teams that we'll talk about shortly, and as we get deeper into this top 20. But I don't see the Explorers are going to go in at least as the front runner for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned, especially on the offensive side, their biggest strength was basically a strength in numbers. They didn't really have that one automatic go-to guy, at least in the receiving core. Obviously, Cedric Irvin was their top running back. He was their workhorse there. But like you mentioned, they didn't have anybody with more than 570 yards and more than 47 catches last year. They really spread the ball around, and they're returning 4 of their top 5 receivers from last year. They always find a way to have guys step up on defense, even when it's basically having to churn out and bring new guys in. But even then, a lot of their top guys were sophomores and juniors last year. So Columbus always finds they find ways to reload. And with 4M, it's basically that's the one class where it feels like it's the most open out of the 4 that we have to deal with. Obviously, 1A Chaminade or 1M Chaminade, 2M. You've got the upper tier guys. 4M is really, it feels like if it's not Columbus, it basically opens up the pool for a lot of the next tier contenders. So if Columbus wants to be able to start placing its hold, now is the time to start showing that it can be that team to assert itself as the top group.
Let's talk a little bit about that because, I know we're skipping ahead a little bit. We'll jump right back to the top. The next few teams we'll talk about, but let's jump a little bit. We're going to talk about those 4M teams, and this will throw people off when they're trying to figure out where we have some teams ranked. But, when you talked about Columbus, I think you have to talk about Western, which is reloaded. I know they lost one of the Broward County's all-time most prolific passers in Colin Hurst, but they added Davy Belfort, who transferred over from Gulliver. He's looking for a breakout season and a plethora of weapons around him and a good and probably one of the better defenses from talking to Coach Rat out there in the spring that they've had in a long, long time over at Western. So the Wildcats, again, will be in the mix. Jordan, you this is one of the teams I know you're most familiar with. You've been able to cover them a lot the past couple of years. What do you think of Western and how they've been able to reload, considering they lost such an important player like Colin Hurst?
Yeah, I mean, obviously losing Colin Hurst, that's big. He's been their quarterback since basically week 3 of his freshman year, and now they're having to basically refill that position. Obviously, they got a good guy. They have a good guy there, the replacement, Dobby Belfort, but they still have a lot of the pieces that were around them in the offense. Chance Washington returns a running back. You've got a couple. You have a couple of their main receivers are still there. Santana Fleming, not Santana Fleming. He left already. Pardon. They have a few of their big weapons there, but the main thing for me is going to be what they do on defense. Defense has always been Western's bread and butter, but once Colin Hurst sort of emerged and became that dude among Broward County quarterbacks, a lot of the focus went toward what the offense was doing, how important the offense was going to be. They're going to need their defense to be that top tier group once again. It's been a good group the last couple of years, but if they can get that group to rise back to Western Wildcat standard and be one of the top defenses in Broward County, that's going to shape them into being a contender. Obviously, they need the offense to continue to produce, but defense is going to be absolutely key for Western this year.
Well, this is the part where we go to another 4M contender that's going to kind of be in that next tier of teams and trying to break through and maybe make some noise, maybe push Columbus to the limit if they can get far enough. And that's the Monarch Knights, who came a long way last year under Coach Calvin Davis. Regional semifinals for the Knights. Remember, as we said before, the Knights are not in Region 4. They're in Region 3, so they would have a different path to state. They'd have to go through some of the top-tier teams in Palm Beach County. Of course, Palm Beach Central, the team that beat them last year to get past that round and get to the regional finals, they're back from what I'm reading from Palm Beach County. Looks like they're reloaded. So that looks like it could be the big obstacle in the playoffs for them. But if they get past that and you get to that state semifinal, we saw it happen with Homestead last year. You never know. A team catches fire. Let's talk about those Knights. I was able to visit them at their first practice yesterday. They had to take it indoors, unfortunately, because of the lightning. But they bring back one of the better quarterbacks, if not maybe one of the best quarterbacks in South Florida, and A.J. Hairston, a UMass commit. I like this kid a lot. He's got that prototypical quarterback look to him. He's become more of a leader for that team. And you've got weapons on that team. Jabari Brady, a young receiver that they have, is one of the most explosive guys. Gabriel Birnbaum and others have beefed up both lines for that team, where this could be one of the deepest teams Monarchs ever had. I mean, a relatively young program still overall in the grand scheme of things, but I think they're ready to take the next big step. In fact, spoke to A.J. Hairston a little bit about that. Here's a look at the interview we had.
Just wanted to talk to you about the season coming up. Big year for Monarch last year. What was that like, and what did you learn from it that you feel like you can bring over to 2023?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately we lost in the second round, but we built a lot of brotherhood and leadership on the team. And next year, just to win it all and learn from our mistakes from last year and just do better.
Coach, tell me you've grown as a quarterback, not just on the field, but being a leader, like you just said. Give me an example of that. What have you done this offseason to kind of be more the leader on this team?
Just showing, just working, literally just showing everybody, but if you're not even just sitting down doing anything, you can still work. Just put in the work every day, day by day, in and out. But even outside of practice, just go out and work by yourself and just get better at what you get better at your craft.
Well, how did you get better at your craft this offseason? What'd you do?
I basically just worked on my mechanics, worked out with my receivers a lot, and just got our timing down.
And where did you go? Any camps, tournaments? What did you kind of do this offseason to get better?
We went to a couple camps with our college tour for our team. And then after that, we just went to random parks and just worked out together.
What do you feel like was the most valuable lesson you learned, maybe from talking to some coach, talking to a former player, or anything like that?
I would say a lesson one of the coaches told us is push your teammates no matter, don't bring them down, always try to keep them up, because if you keep them up, the team is going to always do good. If you just bring them down, your team is going to go down together. So just keep building each other up and keep building them up.
Tell me about that a little bit, and what do you see that maybe last year was something that was missing? Any area on the team where you feel like it's going to be a lot stronger this time around?
I think our O-line should be a pretty stronger group this year. it was good last year, but I feel like this group is a little better and more like prepared. Our receiver core, our quarterback room, we got a couple youngins that we're building up to make a better quarterback room. Our receiver core, they should be one of the best in the county again, just like last year. We all just put that together and just win.
A few of those guys right behind you right now. I mean, tell me about those big guys up front. How confident are you knowing they're there protecting you?
Yeah, I feel pretty good because this year we've been working a lot and we've been putting in the work, so the results will show.
The running game, I hear, is going to be a lot better too. I mean,
yes, sir.
What are some of those guys that are going to carry the load there?
Yes, sir. We got Malik and my other running back, Emmanuel and Kels. They all, them three are pretty versatile, catching the ball, running the ball. It doesn't matter which one they do, they still going to make plays.
How about Coach Davis? Just you talked a little bit about the process it's been to build Monarch to where it's at right now, and the goal that you guys have to take it to the highest level this year. Tell me about that relationship you guys would have had with him and how that's helped everything.
Me and Coach Davis, or the whole team and Coach Davis, we've really built like a really good bond with each other. Coach Davis really puts in a lot of work in overtime for this team and make sure that everybody's good with our grades, helping us out get a tutor, or off the field or on the field, or like getting our technique right, or anything that any of us needs to make sure that we got, so we're a better human and a person and an athlete.
Yeah, so as you see, AJ spent the summer getting better at what he does, and I think you kind of already see those qualities in him, just observing him at practice. You can see how assertive he was, even when he wasn't lining up at the line, the line of scrimmage to run plays. He's running around, he's directing, he's kind of telling this guy, this goes this way, this goes that way. Those are the little intangible things I look at a lot of times with quarterbacks, just to see if really they have a grasp of being the leader on the team. In this case, I don't think it's just sweet talk or a cliche. I think he really has gotten a good grasp. I think Monarch's ready for a breakout season. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking at just what Harrison did last year, I mean, completed almost 68% of his passes, 3,217 yards, 32 touchdowns against 6 interceptions, regardless of what the competition is. That's incredible numbers there. And he's returned a couple of his big guys from last year, specifically, as you mentioned, Jabari Brady, who had about 860 yards last year, 6 touchdowns. He's poised to take the next step. He was only a freshman last year. So to see what he'll be able to do as the number 1 next year is going to be fun to watch. And yeah, Monarch has the chance, and it gives us the potential for yet another, if they're able to make noise in that Region 3, knowing that we're guaranteed to get somebody out of Region 4 into at least the state semis. Another chance for potentially 3 different classifications where we have 2 teams from Dade and Broward who could go into state semifinals and potentially face each other for a state title. Monarch would be the key for that to happen. And it's just, when we think about that, it gets almost laughable at some points when we think about that, right?
Yeah, last year, it's just to see the kind of like that surreal scene of, you had Homestead and St. Thomas, then you had Central and Heritage. And then now there's still a lingering after effect of that, because now I'm coming into this season, I'm thinking to myself, man, Heritage, nationally ranked team, they're so good. Oh, that's right, they didn't win last year. I'm so used to them winning a title. Why? Of course not. They had to go against the juggernaut, and it still was a great game, down to the wire. It shows you how in any other situation, any other class, you could name 4 other classes that Heritage probably could have won a state championship. Homestead had a case to be regarded in that aspect too. So this year, like you're saying, if Monarch goes through and wins that region, it's just going to depend on seeding. If they're not the 4 seed, if let's say Columbus is the 1 seed, if they're the 2 or the 3, then it's just a matter of how do they stack up maybe against Orlando's best team, whether it's a Popka or someone else. And who knows, you might have the 3. And then at that point, and then the irony is, of course, now rumor has it, the state championships are moving upstate, potentially Orlando from what we hear. Now, of course, none of that's official yet, but it's definitely not going to be a Drive Pink Stadium anymore. So that would be ironic too if you have 6 teams vying for 3 titles from South Florida, but of course not in the 305 or the 954. But that's a matter for another time. We've beaten that horse to death already many times. But speaking of Heritage, let's circle back. This is a tier that's a little above the ones, just to give people a hint what we talked about before. But I think after that first group that we spoke about, the defending champion group, you've got American Heritage. And even though they lost a ton of talent, Brandon Innes, Mark Fletcher, guys all over the field that were just, so important, they bring back a lot of talent too. When you look at their roster going into the season, you look at one big acquisition for sure, I think that's going to energize that backfield is DeAndre Desenor, who came over from North Broward Prep. To me, that kid, and then Byron Lewis comes back. He's a returning running back. So that backfield right away is going to be, Mark Fletcher was special. Don't get me wrong. But I think having those two back really bolsters any kind of drop-off you could have had and really keeps Heritage at the top tier. So when you look at those two and other contributors that they're going to have both on offense and defense, I mean, Xavier Lucas is safety. That's gotten a lot of attention. And then up front, a Louisville commit and Jimmy Williams. It's a lot of talent that's still there. And again, the most intriguing battle is going to be between them and Gibbons because, like you said earlier, Gibbons is always solid on defense. They're always well coached, always good. But I think this year, with a guy like Colton Heinrich back, one of the top tight ends, the interesting one is I'm interested to watch this Michael Merdinger kid that's come over, North Carolina commit. That's their new quarterback. So if their offense can get going, that was a little bit of a struggle last year. They're right back there where this rivalry, which has swung one way or the other in the last few years, maybe it tips back in Gibbons' favor. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that's always one of those fun matchups to watch. And again, it's one of the marquee matchups in Broward. And like I mentioned, again, with the running back tandem, it seems like every team we're talking about, it's like we can't find a better 1-2 punch here. And then we talk about another really, really good 1-2 punch. Just the running back situation in South Florida. Got a lot of different 1-2 punches that can make the argument. That's probably something we're going to have to debate later on as we continue through practice here, figuring out who could be the definitive 1-2 punch. So again, we've got what we have at Chaminade, we have what we have at Central, we have what we have at American Heritage. There's just so much depth and talent down here that it's going to be interesting. And yeah, I really want to see what Heritage is going to be able to do in year 2 here. Again, you make the run and then you run to Central. That's just the nature of this Class 2M, where Heritage, Gibbons, Northwestern, Central, Norland, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, just there's so much. It's so top heavy in these two regions that contain Dayton Broward teams that basically, if you draw a name out of the hat, you can make a legitimate argument for why this team could potentially win 2M. American Heritage is definitely one of them.
Looking again at that tier right there of American Heritage, Cardinal Gibbons, and so, I think people can probably figure this out, but you got to mention Homestead in that group. I mean, I think that with what the Broncos have coming back, Joshua Townsend, he was barely taking off the helmet last year at State when I asked him about the potential for this team, considering Coach Philip Simpson was leaving at the time, would they stay together in this day and age where there's so much movement? Well, to their credit, they did. He's back. Isaac Brown's back. Cortez Mills, one of their top wide receivers. And they've added a ton of wide receiver talent on this offense. But I think the biggest thing is the additions they've made. They've made a few additions up front. It's a team now that looks like they're more competitive. And this goes for Monarch, too, that we were talking about before. These teams need to be good up front to have any prayer of stacking up against a Chaminade, against a St. Thomas. Because really, that force up front that just controls the line of scrimmage, if you don't have that, you can't have – and you don't have the depth behind them either, there's no way – you're only going to get to a certain point. And I think that's where some of these teams like a Monarch, like a Homestead, are starting to get – even Columbus, which is a little further ahead in that process, they're starting to get to the point where they are matching up pound for pound with these teams. And that is something that they're able to do. We actually talked with another kid from Monarch from the practice yesterday about that a little bit, Jabari Brady, who you mentioned before, talented wide receiver. He talked a little bit about just that versatility with the Knights. Here's Jabari Brady.
Jabari, tell me a little bit about this offseason. What did you guys learn? What do you think you can carry over from last year, the experience of making it to the second round, and hopefully this year going even farther?
I think our experience from last year is that just got to see as a team. We can't hold on the pressure. But I think this year we're going to do way better than last year. We got new people, new coaching staff, and we should be way better from last year.
What do you think about this offense? A lot of weapons here, a lot of guys like you that can make big plays and make this one of the best offenses around. What do you think?
I think we have the best offense in Broward. That's what I think. We have a lot of materials. We got AJ, one of the best quarterback in the nation. Amari Reed, right? That's a low-key route runner. And we got Robert, and we got Terrell. So I think we should do good this year.
What makes AJ a good quarterback? Like, what do you see?
AJ, he makes throws that no other quarterback can make. Like, I'm blessed that I have him as my quarterback. For me, he's a great quarterback.
What do you see out of him as a leader, though? Like really taking the team.
He's a leader. If we're not doing the right things, he's gonna make sure we're doing the right things. If Coach David's not calling the plays, he's gonna make sure he calls the plays. And even if the defense is doing something wrong, he's gonna make sure we get that straight.
Anything that you as a player feel like you could tell that you're a lot better from last season?
I think I'm a lot better because I just been working out every day in the summer. I have no days off. If I'm not working out with my wide receiver trainer, I'm working with my DB trainer. And if I'm not doing anything, I just make sure I go to my backyard, catch on my drum machine.
Were you on the college tour that they did in the off season?
Yes, we've been to a lot of colleges actually. So, yeah.
How was that like?
It was a good experience. Seeing all the colleges, how they run the offense, their defense, everything. It was a good experience.
Anything that stood out to you that maybe you learned, like something that somebody said, something that you feel like you're going to apply to?
Yeah, I remember when Brian Harline said we're doing over the shoulder throws. Mm-hmm. He said make sure you don't attack the ball because the DB will punch the ball out. Mm-hmm. Make sure the ball takes you where you need to go. So make sure you don't go to where the ball is.
Is there a receiver that you look up to, always have looked up to, or anybody like that?
I always look up to Stephon Diggs, Odell Beckham, and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay. What do you do on the field that is kind of similar to what they do? Anything, any play made, anything like that?
I think my route runner comes from Marvin Harrison. He's a good route runner for Ohio State. And then Stephon Diggs, he just runs his route clean. He gets in and out his routes and everything.
Three of the best ever do it, right?
Yes, sir.
And again, beyond Homestead, I mean, Class 3M, I think they're still definitely going to have a shot to win that region for sure. But, others in the mix that I think are in that next tier, I mean, Norland, we've talked about them plenty before. At least 25 or more transfers that have come into Coach Heidelberg's squad. Another team trying to reach that top level, trying to legitimately have a chance. So when they play a Central, they don't get blown off the field 43-0, where it's a ball game again, to have one of their best, most talented teams on paper since Duke Johnson. So when you look at the Vikings, that's there too. And a team that they eliminated last year, we know Ice Harris, we know what he can do. We're not talking much about Booker T yet, but we will, trust me, they're going to be in that mix too. The thing is, again, they're on that entire region, which is overly stacked. So, in 2M, I'd give Booker T a shot. No matter what, Ben Hanks Jr., one of the top playmakers there on defense, Jamori Flagg, they've still got a loaded squad, and I know they're adding on there too. Gerald Modest in the backfield, that's another team in there too. And of course, you can't not mention the Northwestern Bulls. They're going to be a little younger. They have a new coach in Michael Lee Harris, but from visiting him in the spring, I like the message he's giving his team. I think there's a lot of it's a positive outlook there, and as an alum, I remember when Michael Lee was catching passes from Teddy Bridgewater. He knows what it takes. He knows what goes on at that school. He knows the expectations. He knows the pride, the tradition. So give him some time. I kind of see them a little bit where Booker T was last year when Ice first got there, and it was almost like they had to kind of get the ball rolling again. I think that'll be this kind of season for the Bulls. They'll be competitive. They'll be in a lot of games. It's going to be tough with some of the teams like Central, but don't be surprised if within a year or two, Northwestern's back to being what they've always been. So that's kind of like that next tier there. And then when you get a little further down, you can't go without mentioning Blanche Ely and where they were able to do last year, 11-0 start before they lost to St. Thomas Aquinas. The Tigers are back with a lot of talent. Coach Mike Bailey there always does a good job with them, and they're starting to get there. Here's a team that you know well too, Jordan, that I got the chance to visit in the spring, that's bringing back a few key players like quarterback Cale Alexander, like on defense, Shamar Makel. That's the Miramar Patriots. And boy, the dark side defense is never down completely. And this team, speaking of contenders in 3M, that's another one. They lost last year to Homestead, a game that they really regretted after they gave up a couple touchdowns early on special teams and felt like they really got out of it too quickly, fell behind 20-0. and would have had a better shot. And you never know, if they get past that game, maybe we're seeing Miramar at State instead of Homestead. What do you think of just the Patriots in general?
Yeah, I mean, Miramar, they're always one of those scrappy teams that at this point, just because of how condensed everything is, they kind of flew under the radar until their playoff push. I mean, I saw them in the regular season last year when they played Western, they shut out Western. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, this team could be a dark horse. And they proved me right with the run they made. And again, with veteran quarterback like Hale Alexander, and that's really one of those key things. We talk about running backs, we talk about the Lions, all that, but having a good quarterback sometimes can be that X factor. I mean, with Miramar, Hale Alexander, with Norland, we talk about all their transfers, but Inyo Yapor coming back for his junior year, seeing how much he's going to be able to elevate his game after a breakout year last year, to see some of these pieces that are going to be able to clip together and be able to see how everything loops together is going to be fun, going to be interesting to watch. And then you start dipping down to a few of these other teams that are in this range that basically can round out this top 20. You've got teams that, in the grand scheme of things, might fly under the radar, but you look at teams like Southridge, Coconut Creek, Miami Palmetto, they're always in the picture in some way, shape, or form in 4M. Doral made a decent push last year. Edison always seems to find its big playmakers. You've got a lot of teams that are going to be knocking at the door for the playoff picture. And the thing is, make the playoffs, and who knows what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at teams in Broward, like Coconut Creek made a lot of strides last year. That's another team I'd say to keep an eye on for sure. Palmetto, you mentioned, they've always been in the mix, fighting that battle against Columbus, fighting that battle against Homestead. They'll be right there again. Ja'Cory Barney is one of the best wide receivers overall, probably in the state, one of the best wide receivers in the country. So he's got one of those weapons to watch for the Panthers. Like you said, Doral loses Mark Wilder, the big running back that had the great season last year, but they're going to have a lot of talent. They're going to be back in that mix as well. Edison, Coach Luther Campbell's always got kids that are going to make his team a contender. And then in Broward, going back there again, Plantation, Steve Davis always does. His teams are always competitive. Deerfield Beach has been in a little bit of transition, changing coaches, but there's still some good kids there. I wouldn't be surprised if Deerfield makes some noise. And you got to give credit to Stoneman Douglas for what they did last year. I know, they lost a couple kids, but the Eagles are always competitive. And that's another team to keep an eye on in that region with Monarch and Region 3, 4M. But to wrap it all up, I mean, this is kind of what we're trying to do, kind of ease back into the season, give people kind of an overview. Now, in the next few weeks, Titletown will be back. We're going to be visiting with a lot of schools. In fact, this week are the media days, both in Broward County and in Dade County. So we're going to get a chance to talk to a lot of teams, and we'll be bringing you insights on some of that and any potential news over the next few weeks. But that's pretty much an overview of kind of the contenders so far this year. I'm excited, Jordan. I think this is going to be, I know sometimes you can look at it and say maybe it's the same teams. There's always good games. Somebody will surprise, and we're going to have a lot of fun seeing a lot of the top kids and a lot of the top talent that we're going to see later on at the major college football level and probably the NFL.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun year. It's always a fun year when we get to start the high school football season. It's a great 4 or 5 months of just nonstop action every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's always at least at minimum one game, at maximum 5 or 6 really good games every week. And it's going to be fun to be able to see how everything unfolds this season.
Something going back to what I mentioned before about the heat and the hydration with the record-setting temperatures, unfortunately, out there this summer. Our intern Meadow Barrow did a nice analytical piece talking a little bit about just the way teams are preparing for that heat when they're out there in the so sweltering conditions. If you can, check it out at MiamiHerald.com, see how the schools are preparing for that. And again, as we said before, stay safe out there, guys. Be smart, stay hydrated, do what you need to do to keep yourself in the proper shape and proper health as we go forward into this season. But for that, we will continue to come to you. Remember our high school preview, as we said before, starts rolling out on August 13th. We'll have plenty of stuff from Jordan, from our friend David Wilson, who, by the way, we have to congratulate our buddy.
Yes,
he's still going to be co-hosting the show from time to time, but the man wants to be an attorney. He's going off to law school at FIU, so you might not see him as often, but he still will be a part of it. We'd like to thank him, not just for this show, but he's a good buddy of ours and for all the hard work he's put in. And I'm sure we'll continue to try to in the near future for the Herald. But our congratulations, heartfelt, to him and his next pursuit. We wish David the best, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, David's basically been one of my right-hand men for the last 4.5 years since we both went at the Herald. He's done, again, in addition to high schools, he's done a little bit of everything. He's been our main Panthers guy the last couple of years, was in the middle of everything during their Stanley Cup final run. He's done F1, he's done NASCAR, he helps out with UM, with recruiting. He's one of the couple guys who gives me a breather on the Marlins beat every now and again.
Yeah.
He literally, if there's something that had to have been done in the sports section, David had done it at least once during his time here. He was invaluable to the staff. He was an incredible colleague, an incredible friend, and wishing him nothing but the best in his pursuit in his new career.
We hope he finds time to come back and do some of those things in between reading those gigantic case law books that always are so much fun. I know, as being with an attorney for a long time, I know what she went through. So we wish David congratulations and also best of luck as he tackles that next pursuit in his life. And great to have him there. And that will be it for this week. We're glad to be back. Titletown back for the summer, and like we said, we'll be rolling out our preview soon. Remember, preseason classics will start that week of August 16th, 17, 18, and then the season is finally back on August 24th. So we'll take you on that journey over the next few weeks. So for Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.